Congratulations. You should know the basics now, so welcome to the sophomore course, Poker University.
You know, people aren't used to trying to have to lie all the time, have to disguise their behavior, have to disguise what they do, have to mislead all the time. That's not people's everyday lives. But as soon as they get in a poker game, what happens? They have to lie, they have to deceive, they have to conceal the true strength of their hands, because if they don't do that, they might as well turn their cards face up on the table. So what do players do? At the most simplistic level, they try to act weak when they're strong and strong when they're weak, and they carry this through all up the ladder, even to professional players, except they're not as obvious about it. Now, here is Caro's great law of tells. It says, players are either acting or they aren't. If they are acting, then decide what they are trying to get you to do and disappoint them.
Before you can truly understand tells and take maximum advantage of them, you need to understand the central concept behind the art of reading opponents. When people play poker, they're put in an arena where they know they can't convey the truth about their cards. If they do convey the truth consistently, they might as well turn their cards face up on the table. They're suddenly in an environment where they must deceive, and they're uncomfortable about that, so they become bad actors. Some tells aren't acted. They're the body language of players who are unaware that they're broadcasting clues. But most tells come because opponents are acting, and there's a governing truth at work here. I call it Caro's great law of tells. Opponents are either acting or they aren't. If they are acting, then decide what they want you to do and disappoint them.
You hear me talk a lot about the importance of tells in a poker game. But one thing you have to keep in mind, that most tells are not 100% reliable, and some of them may only be 60% or so reliable. So you have to use tells just as another indicator. Just like if you were playing poker and you see 3 flush cards on the board. Well, it makes it more likely that a player is going to have a flush. If you don't have one, you're in trouble. Another 4th card comes on the board and they're all clubs. Well, it becomes more likely. That's a clue. Well, a tell is just another clue. Every so often there's a tell that's about 100% certain, but that doesn't happen usually. So you just weigh a tell with every other factor in order to help you make a quality decision. You don't use it as an absolute truth. Don't let your ego get involved as you get better at reading people, because when somebody gives you a strong tell, if you act immediately on it or even say to their face, you know, I'm throwing this away because I knew you had it because you did this, obviously you're destroying any future value that tell has. So the real best way to do it is to hesitate slightly, to act as if you're in doubt when you have an absolute certain tell on somebody, and then throw it away, be in doubt, ask what they had, and don't try to be smart like you made a great laydown. Act as if you're not sure. And that means that opponent may repeat the tell in the future.
The players I play with don't have these tails that Mike, you know, he says they
and
may.
They really don't. In the biggest game, well, the weak players who come.
I've had tails on great players. I've had Stu Unger, Johnny Moss, and Jack Strauss. I had 100% tails on them.
You talked about
it. Didn't come up that often, but when it did come up, it was 100%.
And that was the whole pot you could win.
Moss's tail was he over relaxed his face. I could see him across the room and tell sometimes when he was bluffing. His face would just be totally relaxed without any movement in it at all. And it's just impossible almost to get your face in that situation.
But that's amazing because he had to put himself in that mode to appear relaxed, and that was what he did when he was bluffing.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
And Stu Unger, I had a tell on him that when he looked back at his hand, he always had it against me. This didn't work against everybody, but when he looked back at his hand, he wanted to be sure that I knew that he wasn't betting on a squeeze, if you know what a squeeze is, where a card is a 50% or 2-to-1
Right, to see
favorite,
if
like a
it's
3 across,
nothing across,
is a 6, 7, or 8.
Yeah.
And he would always look back to be sure that I saw him looking back, and he knew what he had. He thought that would make me throw my hand away.
And he used that too often, and went to the well too many times,
But I
became a tell.
always did as you suggested. I always waited and said, well, I'm not sure, but I'm going to call you.
Yeah, because you don't want to use up that tell. But Doyle, we're telling everything to high amplify for the Poker University. This would be the time to tell me if you have any tells on me.
I have none, Mike. I never know what you're thinking.
Is that just a poker player's statement, or is that the truth?
That's the truth.
Good man.
I just wanted to show you, no matter who you are, how long you've been playing, you have to be very aware that you may give some information by body language. I only played with the legendary Nick the Greek one time, and I can remember this just like it was yesterday. Here was my hand, there was his hand. Here was the flop. He bet, and I called him. I thought that, well, he possibly is drawing in a flush here. Got a deuce of spades, and he bet again. And he made an extra large bet, and I called him again. And the last card was the tray of diamonds, which would have completed the flush, is what I thought that he had. And when this tray of diamonds hit, he kind of slumped. And when he did that, I became aware he thought that I was the one that was drawing at the flush and missed it. And I was first, and I checked it, and he moved in on me, and I called him with these 2 fours. This was the most legendary gambler of that time. And, he still had a tail. So you have to be very aware of that and watch yourself. Right after this, he went to Gardena, and he was playing $5 and $10 limit. And this
that was the end of his career.
This was the most famous gambler in the world. Had played higher than any other player had ever played at that point. And a guy went up to him, and he said, "Aren't you Nick the Greek?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Well, aren't you embarrassed to be here playing $5 and $10 limit?" And he uttered the immortal words. He said, "Action's action."